language reading, I'm just going to say that Ju Wenjun looks like she's somewhat nervous. Of course, she is an experienced match veteran. She played Tang Zhongyi in 2018 for the Women's World Championship title. She won. She also defeated Alexandra Goryachkina in 2020. But here we see her in a completely different situation, because in those previous matches, Ju had always won a game up to game 4. She defeated Tang Zhongyi in game 2. For Alexandra Goryachkina, it was in game 4 where she made the breakthrough. And here it just seems that there's a big deadlock on the board. Neither player giving it an inch. And handshake. And we're going to see the first move of game 5.
E4.
And you are right. The temptation is just too strong. You want to put away the Berlin once and for all.
Right. Well, there are other openings except the Ruy Lopez. We might still see some kind of Italian, but for the moment it's knight f3, knight c6. Ju continues with the Berlin defense. She's true.
So here it could be the point of variation. For instance,
Bishop c4. Okay.
Bishop c4. Okay.
The Italian.
So Lei Tingzhe has had enough of the Ruy Lopez, the Berlin defense, and it is the Italian. And now the ball is in Ju Wenjun's court. Is she going to develop the knight and allow the Frei Liber and knight f6?
Well, it might be still transpositioning to the Italian later on. It depends on White's answer. Of course, White has this possibility to play knight g5 and dive directly into those complications, including possibility of the Frei Liber attacks that you mentioned. But there are other moves, such as a quiet d3, which usually after bishop c5 still transposes to the quiet Italian. And of course, I'm very happy to see a new opening on the board. I do play it quite often with the white pieces, so I'm looking forward to seeing what Lei and her team prepared for this event. Now she's looking at the ceiling, probably trying, to remind us of Beth Harmon and Queen's Gambit. Nowadays, people not so close to chess, they always expect chess players to look at the ceiling. So it's a very important PR move that she is doing right now. We can praise her for that.
There's a kind of thing that if you look, it escapes me which direction it is. But if you look, I think to the right, you're telling the truth. And if you look, you're trying to recall something. It could be the other way around. Don't quote me on this, but you've got to look at the eye directions. Right. I need to brush up on my body language 101. And as you mentioned there, Lei Tingzhe looking up to the ceiling, trying to recall something. And you mentioned Beth Harmon there. And one of the things about Beth Harmon is that they really played in that TV series that she was thinking in terms of visualization and just boards. And this is a kind of entirely different thinking to what I've usually done. Like, for instance, when I play chess, I'm thinking with words, I'm thinking with plans, I'm talking to myself at times. And when I asked some of the top players whether speaking different languages impacted on their style of play and the move d3 has been played, one of the grandmasters told me, in fact, they never ever thought with language at all. It was just simply a case of chess and the moves literally playing themselves out, like Beth Harmon did in the Queen's Gambit.
Yeah. Well, I think we've briefly already touched this topic, like in the previous broadcast. I think it's very important to do sometimes what you are doing, to try to put in words, right? Certain plans, ideas, like to highlight, because it like let you not make mistakes. Avoid making certain mistakes, because like if you talk to yourself about like the importance of development in the opening, right? If you are confronted with an unknown, to you, some theoretical line, but you okay, I don't know this line, but what do I need to do in the opening? I need to develop pieces, fight for the center castle, and it might help. Those small reminders might be very, very helpful. And that's why it's so important, because like lines, if you start diving, if you start counting all those moves and lines and complicated variations, you might just, get lost. And those words may actually guide you in those complications.
Yeah. And talking about lines and getting lost, we do see quite a few moves being played. The king has gotten itself to safety. The rook on f1 has been activated, so to speak. And there we see Leiting J setting up this little center of c3, d3, and e4. And lots of plans on the board. Perhaps she wants to play d4. Perhaps she wants to expand on the queen side with b4, a4. That's a very trendy idea. And, well, that idea of b4 has now been put to bed.
Exactly. Now, there are many small things happening. Like, for example, we saw Lei taking a deep, quite a long, relatively long think after knight f6. The reason behind that was, I checked very briefly, but it seems that Zhu Wenjun always, played bishop c5 at her previous games. Knight f6 is something new, probably prepared for this championship, and it avoids certain lines with c3, d4 in the Italian. So Lei kind of contemplated for some time. She played d3. After that, the game transposed to the Italian. So if she prepared at home this quiet Italian, nothing new for her. And for the moment, say that black opted for this d6 a5 line. It's already quite a big direction, because there are other ways for black to meet the Italians. They can try to play a very aggressive and sharp d5 line, so castle on d5. After d6, white can opt for something connected with bishop g5, also quite a sharp line. And after c3, a5 is another step that kind of defining the situation and indicates the black's plan and black's ideas here, because a5 indeed, as you mentioned, stops at least b4, kind of makes it harder to play b4 for white, but at the same time it weakens the b5 square quite a lot, and we might see white's bishop or white's knight get there to b5 later on. And well, I expect to see a very interesting theoretical battle in this line.
I certainly do as well. And I was just checking out, because now Leiting J has taken a pause, and so I was going to check the openings and see how popular a5 is. And it is not the first choice by any means in a6,
it's
as you mentioned, castles, bishop b6. But a5, just 185 games. When you consider that, this opening has been played thousands and thousands of times.
For centuries.
I do not exaggerate. Exactly. It has very, very strong pedigree. A5, I remember it being popular when I decided to play e4, e5, and this was around about 2008, because this was the kind of scheme that I hatched up. And no, I didn't hatch up. That's completely incorrect. I decided to adopt this approach as well. And the whole idea is that a5, as you kind of stop white from ceding space, but at the same time, you can drop the bishop to a7, which can be important. And now white has, I'm just taking a look at the opening database, white has many things that they can do. They can also play, I'm just going to pull up the analysis board of a4. That is one plan. Just cement that b5 square. And still, black's position has a lot of flexibility, lots of plans available to black. And another approach that white can take is, if I go back, instead of a4, And you can go knight bd2, which is very normal. I have to say, I have to confess, rather than say, is that I've always struggled with this type of opening because I feel that neither white nor black have too much space, and it's so many minor pieces on the board. Okay, and we see a different approach, just as I was going to say knight bd2, but I'm pretty sure that knight bd2 will make an impression, and still, again, very flexible. And let's go back to the game.
Bishop b3 is played. It's quite an interesting approach. I don't remember seeing this move very often, but I know that sometimes I do retreat the bishop to b3 just to prepare for bishop e6 to be able to retreat this bishop further away, either to a4 or to c2. But yeah, more like regular moves that we see in this position is definitely the ones that you mentioned: a4, knight b2, d2, rook e1, and only later on white starts moving this bishop. But again, it might all transpose to similar positions, and the fact that Lei is taking her time, even though I'm sure they've prepared some plan against this a5 Italian, because Zhu Wenjun had already played this line before with a5. There are so many moves orders, moves transitions, and like small details that you really feel like, taking this time and kind of recalling everything and rechecking, because this Italian game theory expanded so much in the last a quarter of a century, just because of the fact that because of the Berlin defense, actually. When the Berlin started to appear in every second game after e4, e5, white started to look for other ways around. And I remember when I was growing and somebody was playing the Italian, it just was considered to be a drawish line, and we were referring to this person who played the Italian that he or she just tries to make a draw, just play bishop c4 and rook e1, bishop e3, kind of exchange these bishops, and black do the same, rook e8, bishop e6, and that's it. But now it's a different story. If somebody plays the Italian game, it doesn't mean they're trying to make a draw.
It certainly doesn't mean that at all. And what we're going to see instead is that, actually, I did see in the chat that Senorita was giving us a heads up that this line of bishop b3 has been recommended by Anish Giri in his chessable course.
Right.
And as far as I know, this chessable course is hot new information. And there we see castles. So Lei Ting-Jie, I wonder whether she's caught Zhu Wenjun unawares. And there we see black castle. And what is Lei Ting-Jie going to follow up with? Is it going to be a4? I mean, she still has that flexibility where she can play anything. She can develop, she can go a4, she can also go knight d2 and wait for that decision to happen. She can also go for your rook e1, bishop e3 plan that you mentioned. And also, I also wonder whether bishop g5 is going to be in the air. I always have a preference for securing squares, so I think I would go a4.
Right.
And get control over b5 and smile a little bit. But that's all I can do.
It's funny because I looked at the last games, I checked the last games of this move order, and I see Hou Fan Lei Ting-Jie gave from Women's Speed Chess Championship on chess.com back in 2021. So Lei actually plays this line with both colors now. So that just indicates that she might really, feel the ideas and.
Well, yeah. Also, it could mean that she was uncomfortable, right, in the game with the black pieces. So definitely experience from both sides will help. And rook e1 on the board. And I always was really confused by this whole opening in general. But one of the things that confused me a lot was this idea of rook e1. When to play it? Should you prepare it with h3? Should you just go immediately and then put your rook in e2 if the knight comes out to g4? And there was so many possibilities. And someone did give me a tip as to how you can assess the Italian games, because again, it's very, very tense. They said, look at the power of the bishops. And often this bishop on b3 will be a fantastic piece, maybe 15 moves down the line. After you've done all the maneuvers, after you've broken through with d4 or black has gone d5, it will all hinge on the power of the light squared bishop. And yeah, we will see what happens. Rook e1. What will black play? Will black play knight out to g4? H6?
Yeah, again, there are different ways and moves, I believe, for black here, including bishop a7 or bishop e6, or preparing it with rook e8. But yeah, you're right that when you play rook e1 or rook e8, you always, without including h3 or h6, you have to consider this knight g4, knight g5 option. And in general, as I understand it, it's better to avoid playing h3 or h6, but sometimes you just can't, because if you play rook e1 and there is a possibility of playing knight g4, the moves that you should consider when making this move without this h3 inclusion. Sometimes it's kind of here, white already has to protect the pawn on f2. Of course, white doesn't want to get back to f1. Yeah, usually white plays rook e2. And here there are different moves like king h8, h3, even f5 ideas exist, but not in this position, because I don't think it works here. But still, I mean, there is a line that I play with black.
But you know, actually, it exists in this position.
In this position as well. Okay.
In this position, I'm seeing that it exists, that the computer does not laugh after f5.
That's good. Then we should check it out. No, because it's a very nice idea, and I've tried it in my own games in a little bit like slightly different situation, but still, I mean, those ideas can be pretty unpleasant, and same can be said for like black. If black uncarefully, I mean, plays rook e8, and knight g5 and f4 connected with f4 might happen. And
yeah, just to kind of expand the whole idea of f5 is that after f takes g5, if the knight takes a careless point, g3 is coming in, and it's going to be backed up by queen h4, and there's too much pressure on f2, which means that knight g5 is possible, but g3 is still incredibly dangerous for black. So that is the concrete idea behind playing f5. And let's go back to the board. And big decision, is she going to play knight g4? Is she going to do rook e8, as Alexandra highlighted?
Yeah, that's why basically white usually plays h3, you know, just to play it safe, just not to consider those knight g4 or even bishop g4 ideas, and then get back to rook e1, knight d2, knight f1, knight g3, and preparing d4 plan. And yeah, it's weird when, I mean, white plays the d3 and it's quite Italian, and same can be said about black. It doesn't mean they're not thinking about d4. They actually dream of making d4 at the right point, but just because of the fact that they didn't have a chance to play d4 in the opening, because of those concrete lines and variations, they played this quiet move, you know, protected the pawn on e4 for the moment, but still they want, I mean, now to regroup the pieces to protect this e4 square, and then at the end, like, play this d4 breakthrough. So that's basically the plan for both colors. For white, for black, they're similar.
Yeah, they are very similar. Yeah, completely. I mean, it's very risky for white to play d4 because, as you highlighted, white can't maintain the tension in the center for too long because it just gets chipped away. The bishop will come out to g4. And at some point, white will have to either take on e5, which isn't ideal if you're not ready for it, or go d5, which again isn't that great. So that's why white, as Alexandra highlighted, moves that knight all the way to g3. And then, and this is, I remember one of my very first trainer. I had my very first trainer at the age of 27. Can you believe it?
Wow.
But he was really good.
Right. Well, better late than never, right?
Right. And then he used to say to me, it's all about catching black on the wrong foot. And I always like that expression. You are playing for d4 every single opportunity, but you got to do it when black isn't ready for it or is least expecting it. So we'll see. And Ju Wenjun, whereas with Lei Ting-Jie, we've seen something very concrete from her. Where she can take the most forcing route, she will. So if it were Lei Ting-Jie to play right now, I would expect knight g4, I would expect f5, right. And I would expect fireworks. Ju Wenjun has kind of taken a less risky approach. We've seen her kind of put her energies into the end game portion.
But yeah.
So where she can, she chooses something stable. But yeah, sorry.
No, but I was just saying that here this whole idea with knight g4, rook e2, and then king h8 might be too slow because of the fact that white can play d4 after king h8, and not because of h3.
So let's just highlight this. So if you go king h8, there might be something concrete. Yeah, there is. Oh, how unfortunate. d4 and bishop a7, bishop b6. Who knows? I never know where to put the bishop.
Yeah, nobody does. Right.
It's one of those decisions that come back to bite you 20 moves down the line. And if you're frustrated like me with this type of opening, avoid it. I say switch to d4. Get your closed positions with more straightforwardness. And there we see that, of course, h3 is coming and there is no f5 on the board. But, decision time.
Yeah, so she retreated the bishop, apparently, to a7.
Bishop a7, yeah.
Okay, one of the many possibilities for black. And why not? After all, maybe now, after bishop a7, black can, consider or even really want to play knight g4. So white has to do something about that.
Yeah. Okay. And that actually is the reason why, according to this database, white has predominantly played h3.
Exactly.
Knight g4 is an idea, so should be prevented. And also, something that I really wanted to stress about Lei Ting-Jie is that she's been exceptionally well prepared. I think barring game 2, when she played into that Tarash, she's been blitzing out the moves. Often she's had more time than when she started with. And now here we see her take a small pause again. So this is somewhat untoward from Lei Ting-Jie.
And again, because this Italian game, it's so complicated in terms, there are so many options for both colors on every single move, like bishop a7, rook e8, bishop e6, h6, knight e7. There are so many plans, and you have to kind of find yourself recalling all those nuances every single move, and the position changes slightly. I mean, at some point h3 is important to make it. In a slightly different situation you should avoid it. And I don't know what, again, her team prepared for this a5 setup. We're gonna see what direction she's gonna pick a little bit later on. But we also have to understand that since she started with bishop c4 and after knight f6, there was some kind of a long thought. There might be a possibility that they prepared something different after bishop c4, bishop c5, like with c3, d4 moves, and knight f6 came as a surprise because Ju Wenjun had never played it before. All those kind of...
That
possible,
was,
right?
I think you're right, because Lei Ting-Jie, when she's in her opening preparation, the speed of her moves tell us very clearly she knows what she's doing. And here we see her hesitating. h3 is a very natural move, but like you say, if you're not familiar with the position, you could be thinking about other things as well, Knight bd2, you're also contemplating all of the plans that black has, how you're going to react to them. It's such a tense game. And I also remember the times when you referenced that everyone used to say, the Italian game boring. And I remember I remember we used to all play the Italian game because somehow or other, when it came to the English women team, we were all playing the same openings. I don't know how this happened, but it did.
Very convenient.
And none of us had the same. I mean, I didn't have a trainer. I mean, I think it was just the kind of sharing of ideas that, I didn't have an opening. And so they would say, why don't you play this? And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, fine. And I remember someone suggested this. And I was like, okay. And
let's give it a try.
It even fell under the category of the Italian. I laugh at this now, and something that John Erms called, he's an English grandmaster, called the boil in the bag. And when he said to me, you want a boil in the bag? And I was like, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean. And he goes, ready in 5 minutes. And I was like, ah. And it was this Italian game that he kind of talks about. Just do this, this, and this. Easy position, equal position. Maybe you can be slightly better at some points, but done. You won't be in trouble.
Right, yeah. A dream come true scenario, right, of an opening preparation. We all want to get ready in 5 minutes.
Can you imagine that these days? I mean, ready in 5 minutes.
No, it used to be like this. A trainer just showing us a few ideas, basic plans, and that's it. You go and play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those days are long gone, and Lei Tingye, just thinking about her move. And obviously, Lei Tingye, she is striving to become the 18th Women's World Champion, but you are the 12th Women's World Champion. So I would love to know, what was it like when you suddenly realized that moment that you were now Women's Champion?
Yeah, it was a little bit different at the time when I became a world champion, because we didn't play those long matches. The whole system, was changing all the time, starting from 2000 or 1999, where FIDE first introduced this knockout events, and suddenly this world champion title was within the reach, I would say, because it used to be a 3-year circuit to be able to get a chance to play a world championship match. Then it switched to once every 2 years knockout events, and then FIDE started alternating knockout events and matches, and at the end knockout events started to be called World Cups, and from actually 2021, and a world champion crown in both women and, we say men, but it's the overall, right, world champion crown now can again be only won in a world championship match. And when in 2008 I became a world champion, it was a knockout event. So it was a little bit different. The final match consisted only of 4 games, and it was the final part of a very long tournament. And of course, I was happy anyway. But actually, I think I was even happier in 2021 when I won this 2021 World Cup, and because.
And there we do see H3 on the board. But going back to your time as a Women's World Championship, and actually, you played in actually many types of the tournaments, Women's World Cup knockouts. I mean, talk us through the preparation involved. I mean, what's it like? Because obviously success doesn't happen from nowhere.
Right, but it's it's not just a one tournament preparation. You are preparing for this kind of success, for this kind of victories your whole life, and I think every tournament, every game matters in that case. And since I've mentioned that I won this title in a world champ in a knockout event, it's not the same kind of preparation as the preparation these ladies did for this world championship title, because even preparing for a candidates match last year, I did so much preparation, and of course I lost the match anyway, but I was just imagining how hard it is to prepare for a long, 12 game match. It's very, very hard.
But so you mentioned that you were preparing. Can you talk us through like what you did? I mean, would it obviously involve some physical exercise? Like how
Yes,
many hours per
always.
day? I mean, what kind was it? Always was the focus on just openings, or are you kind of sharpening the tools and tactics, end games?
Yeah,
That,
always you
yeah.
prefer kind of focus on every single part that
Mm-hmm.
you think is important. Of course, the openings nowadays, unfortunately, like you need to spend a lot of time on them. Just basically preparing for every single opening that might happen and trying to refresh your opening knowledge about some lines that might not even happen in this upcoming match, but still you need to at least I feel that way, that you need to be prepared for every single opening, every single line. So it's already quite a huge amount of work, but of course you cannot neglect working on your tactical skills and refreshing some endgame positions, and of course physical preparation is also important. So basically, it's like not a 24-hour job, because I feel that I used to be able to work much more when I was younger. Like 10 hours a day was a peanut for me, but now it's not really the case. So like I get tired. Um, a lot easier, but still it's not less than 8 hours a day, and it's never enough, you feel that it's never enough, and you really, at least I feel that you need to work more and more and more, and it's a never ending story, because there are so many lines and
Mm-hmm.
nuances and ideas that you want to prepare, and
Yeah.
just
And
it's a
you
constant
said
work.
you said 8 hours a day. That's like a almost that's basically a full-time job.
Yeah, of course.
So
Yeah,
how
of
do you
course.
maintain the focus? I mean, are you talking about like studying with a trainer, or is a lot of the work done by yourself alone? How do you keep your enthusiasm for the game alive? Because I have a confession to make. I'm going to link it back to myself, but as soon as you put me alone on a board, I get very tired. It's suddenly a
Unfortunately,
lot
yeah,
of
that's the
energy.
case. For me, it's the same story, and I think actually that's the main difference between women and men, and the overall rating gap that comes because of this fact that in general, women, they just can't work on their own. I mean, it's so much harder for them for different reasons. But when we talk to men, they just basically spend 24 hours sitting at the computer analyzing and all those lines, and it's just the way it is. So when I prepare for an important event, of course, I either try to talk my husband into those preparations, so he's there, kind of forcing me to work. We're like working, discussing lines together, or he's even
Yeah.
putting me some problems to solve. But still, it's so much easier in a way than trying to work on my own, because if I like on my own, it happens pretty often, but still I spend so much time and energy just putting myself into work, that it's so much easier to find someone to work with. And yes, if I prepare for a very important event, I try to find person, a grandmaster, somebody who will be with me and who will be like helping me and working together along with me. It just
Yeah.
will be so much easier.
Yeah, it will be a lot easier. I agree with you completely. I definitely think that having a sparring partner, having a social network that plays chess will definitely make chess so much more fun. And I'm relieved to hear as well that the same difficulties and struggles I faced when I'm working alone. Suddenly the pieces become very heavy, and suddenly my brain is
Right.
also getting it onto its a monkey mind and thinking about other things. That is still something that affects us all. And in the meantime, we are there in the playing hall alongside Lei Tingjae, the challenger. She's playing white, and when June has just developed her bishop and challenged Lei Tingjae. So big think for Lei Tingjae ahead. Does she swap off? Does she not? And All that is happening in the beautiful city of Shanghai. Check out that skyline rather. It's a city steeped in culture, history, and also the birthplace of Chinese cinema. It is a beautiful place, exciting place. And with that, we are gonna head off into a break, and we will see you shortly in a few minutes.
Hi, I'm Grandmaster Anish Giri, and welcome to Latvian Repertoire's 1e4. The so-called Latvian gambit is horrible. F5, knight takes e5. This is not how chess is played. He played too many moves with pawns and the queen, and didn't develop his light pieces. And if knight e4, this is a very important trick to remember. Many people fall for it, actually. Knight to b5, brilliant idea. ab, and queen g7, and after rook f8, bishop h6, queen c5, and f3, and surprisingly, queen f2 is almost checkmate, but it's not. If your opponent wants to be solid, we go for the aggressive, for the kill. If your opponent wants us to go for the kill, we play simple chess. And just use the fact that we have more space in the center, clear-cut plans, and nothing to worry about.
Yeah, there are a few. I mean, one for sure is interviewing the Holocaust survivor in 1956, French women's chess champion Isabelle Schauffele. Started out as a podcast for Ladies' Night in the Grid, and it turned out that I got a chance to travel to Paris and actually meet Isabelle herself. That's a little piece that's going to be coming out on chess.com soon. That was just magical. I mean, I'm Jewish, and seeing the rise of anti-Semitism is really disturbing. And to be able to talk to somebody who was almost slaughtered in one of the worst atrocities of all time, but is still living 80 years later, and really not just living, but thriving, like providing so much inspiration to everyone around the world. I mean, it's a magical moment. Like, this is like one of the reasons why we play chess and why we create art, for moments like that. So I feel really lucky to have met Isabelle and thankful for that. Also, another moment that really stands out for me was when Judith Polgar visited my US Chess Girls Club. We had hundreds of girls there from all over the world. In fact, we had girls from Kenya. We had girls from, obviously the United States, from Colombia. And we also had adult women there as well. So it was a huge turnout, and Judith was just so charming and brilliant in her answers. In particular, I noticed that a lot of girls asked her similar questions on a variation of like, what do you do if your confidence is shattered? What do you do if you lose a few games in a row? If you're scared, if you don't know what to do? And it's funny because Judith's reply was so striking to me, because she was just like, oh man, these questions are tough for me because I've always been so confident. And she did manage to reply, but it was interesting to me to see that was a bit of a struggle for her, because she has always had that confidence that she was great. She hasn't suffered from imposter syndrome. And I think that's a big secret to her success, and just a reminder of how important confidence is to becoming the best chess player that you can be.
Welcome back. I hope you're refreshed and re-energized after that short break. And we are back in the wonderful city of Shanghai there on the waterfront. There we see the historical buildings, and it's there right in the center where the center of the chess action is happening between these two players, Lei Tingjie and Zhu Wenjun, reigning three-time women's world champion. And as they face off against each other in Zhu Wenjun's home city, well, let's dive back into the action, because just before the break, we did see that Lei Tingjie did have a choice. Should she trade light square bishops? Should she refuse that and maintain the tension? And true to Lei Tingjie's active style, she says, you know what? There is not going to be any trade for me. I'm going to keep those bishops on the board. And the bishop has found itself on c2. Now, it does look like this isn't the best square for the bishop, but mark my words, something will happen with it. 10 moves to 15 moves down the line. And white is still gearing up for that well-timed d4 break.
Right, and black is now considering the d5 move. Well, there is a possibility to play d5. You never know whether you want it to happen on the board or not, but you can consider this move, and you should think, of course, you can play h6 to make some kind of waiting move, but then it's white's turn, and Lei might consider, h6 is on the board, and it's Lei's turn to consider whether she wants to play d4, because now she can, right? Her e4 pawn is protected, her bishop on c2, and the rook on e1, they guard this pawn, and after playing d4, she threatens to play d5 with a fork, and it's a big decision. And as I mentioned before, you never know whether you really want to play d4 or not. Maybe you can still, develop your pieces, or play a4, the move you mentioned, or knight d2 or knight a3. It's a tough choice, but we can try to analyze what might happen after d4.
Yeah, d4 is the kind of Lei Tingjie's signature, right? It's direct, it's forcing. So let's have a look. Okay, black can respond by capturing that pawn. As that, I think there's been one game in the database, because as you mentioned, d5 has happened. There's been a few games.
There are still games.
Yep. And as the e4, e5 player, would you be capturing on d4, or would you perhaps move? No, you can't move the knight.
You can't really. I don't. Yeah.
Because this pawn on e5 will hang. So this means that you have to capture on d4. And now, big decision. Capture with the knight. Yes, go for it. Knight takes. And now you're hitting at the knight on c6 and the knight on e6. And how does black respond to a move like this?
Well, I mean, of course, you can take on d4, but it's always scary, right? Letting those pawns. It should be something concrete after c takes d4, something like d5.
Yeah, but remember d5. I remember I said about this bishop on c2 becoming a monster, and just like that, it happened, because I can just see a scenario like the knight jumps into e4, which is kind of what you want to do. You don't want to be heading backwards and allowing this bishop to sit on this dream diagonal. I would just, without even thinking, play knight c3. Get rid of this.
It looks very nice. So it seems that after knight takes d4, black has to make d5 move, which is far from obvious, and it's not really the moves that you consider because of the bishop on e6 hanging. But in that case, after d5, if white captures on e6, f takes e6, the bishop on a7 and the rook on f8 suddenly start to work together towards this f2 pawn, and that might hold the position. Although, again, it's so far from obvious, it's not really usual sequences of the moves that you see after d4.
Yes, I must admit, I would be very reluctant after knight takes d4 to even play d5. I would be I'm such a chicken. I would play bishop d7.
Right.
And go, no, sir, I do not want to ruin my pawn structure. Yeah.
Well, that's fair enough.
I agree with you.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
But I agree with you. After f takes e6, this is going to be uncomfortable. So uncomfortable that I feel that bishop e3 has to be played.
Not just after bishop e7, bishop d7. Probably white has time to develop bishop e3, knight d2.
Yeah.
Like bishop e3, rook e8, knight d2, protecting the pawn on e4. And just in time, to bring all her pieces into action.
That's right. That is, and white does have a nice space advantage. And the bishop on c2, it's always poised to activate itself. So, and whereas the bishop on d7, it's not well placed at all. So it really does work out what this grandmaster told me. It's all to do with the potential and the power of the light squared bishops, even though it doesn't look like that yet.
Yet, but we know it might, say the decisive word later on in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And we also should consider taking a capturing on d4 with the pawn. C takes d4.
Okay. Again, that one, to me, this one looks less good, only for the reason that, and I'm okay, so when I was an e4, e5 player, I used to play a lot these kind of e5 structures. And did I see correctly? We're analyzing this move. We're thinking that Lei Ting-Jie will go for the most direct response. We're figuring out her style. And sure enough, it is on the board. Okay, so d4. And let's dive into the analysis. Like c takes d4. And this one didn't appeal to me so much because what I was going to say was that in the advanced French structures, you really want this bishop on the c2 to h7 diagonal. It's the perfect attacking piece. And so the move that I always faced was like knight b4. And if you have to go bishop b3 or you lose this wonderful attacker, then I feel like white is fine. There's nothing objectively wrong with it. But
knight to b4. Yeah. I mean, sounds very reasonable, but why didn't I even consider this move? What if I just move my bishop away to a4?
I didn't think about that. I was thinking about bishop b3. I was keeping that. Oh, is there something? I see the evaluation bar go down. So, but maybe now you can do the d5. Now that you can stick a knight on e4.
Yeah, I checked out. The computer just grabs the pawn on a2. The move that we wouldn't. Just bishop a2. I just say, girls, there is a pawn hanging. What are you talking about? Okay, well.
That is.
All right. So.
Okay. No, I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking d5 and then knight to e4 and then just live a little bit. But okay, so grab that pawn. Yeah, of course. When the computer shines a light, then it shines a light very clearly. So, okay, but we do...
Probably after knight before, I do need to just develop, to say, okay, you kind of get this bishop, but you spend so much time, so I can play knight c3, knight takes c2, queen takes c2, and try to prove that my beautiful pawn center and time that you spent for getting this bishop might pose certain problems to black.
Yes, there's going to be problems, particularly with this light square bishop, actually, because, I mean, I'm a big fan of connecting the rooks. Where I can, I would want to step forward with a queen I don't want to go to queen e7 because it's in the eye line of the e1 rook, and I don't want to go to d7 because, d5 might be a problem, although what are we seeing?
Knight takes d4, she captured with
knight takes d4. Okay, so that was all just hearsay. She did go knight takes pawn, and again, decision time for Ju. Best move, according to the engine, is to strike in the center.
Yeah, but it's so hard. I mean, somehow unless you know this idea, like to play d5. Well, you know that d5 breakthrough is important, right? So you always have to consider this move if you have a chance. But again, somehow it's psychologically difficult right now because your bishop on e6 is kind of can be captured by the knight, and you might just start worrying about this bishop being captured, and you might get this feeling of retreating it to d7, as you mentioned, or just to try to keep it on the board. But yes, sometimes, often actually, the time factor is a very important factor in chess. And here we see that white is undeveloped, right? Still, the knight is on b1, the bishop on c1, although it stays pretty. It's a nice bishop. You don't have to really develop it because it's already kind of developed. But still, those pieces, they kind of indicate that something, might go wrong for white. And it might be this time where black has to be active and to push in the center.
Yeah, there is that indication. And also, the first move you would assess is, I think, bishop d7. It is a passive move. And once you start assessing this type of position, rook e8, knight b d2, we pull up the analysis board, and then we see that white is in time. But what it will be white's plan, and how pleasant is it apart from optically looking great?
It depends on.
She has played bishop d7, so we are actually going to see it.
Yeah, we might. Actually, it's a good news, I think, for white, because Lei gets all the time she needs to finish development, right? To bring those pieces into play, to play bishop e3, knight e2. Maybe nothing, terrible for black happening just yet, but the position starts to be quite passive because of the fact that I was thinking that after bishop e3, rook e8, knight e2, we still need to understand what is going to happen after d5. Because if in that position, black is able to play d5, it might, as well, solve all black's problems. But it seems that it's not as good.
Yeah. No, it looks good, but at the same time, there is an opening up of the light squares, and I get very excited when I see this.
Right. Promised.
And immediately,
yes.
Exactly, and the aggressive commentator player in me, is like, oh, what will happen if there's a sacrifice? What other moves are there?
We don't have to sacrifice. We can just capture on c6. Knight takes c6, okay. Bishop takes c6. Or a pawn. It doesn't matter. Then bishop takes a7, rook takes a7. The rook is badly placed on a7, by the way. And then e5. And it seems that white is just ahead.
Totally, right?
Unless knight e4 works. Because after knight d7, I think white can be happy with the position. Knight e4, it doesn't. Okay, I capture. T takes e4. Yeah, and you see the rook on a7, the h7 square. After queen takes d1, rook takes d1, there is no rook e5. Or is it? There is.
No, there's not.
Bishop h7, sorry. Yeah, some tactics sometimes helps.
Yeah. So just to show that out onto the board, this would be... Oh, hang on a second.
No. Immediately rook h7, bishop h7. Yeah, I was thinking about rook d8.
Okay. Yeah. Bishop h7, of course. Mm-hmm. That one puts it in the back of the net. Yeah, bishop h7 nets the exchange. The rook on e5 will fall off. So good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't do that. And bishop a7. So no, if you can't jump also with your knight to e4, so after e5, then you have to go backwards. And it's this problem of this bishop again. This bishop is so powerful.
And here knight
you
e3
also have
or
that
even f4. Yeah, bishop e3 is played.
Bishop e3, very natural.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I want to push pawns. You will come to understand me by the end of our commentary. I want to push pawns. I want to go knight f3. I want my queen to come out. A simple caveman
who
chess.
doesn't? I mean, of course. Why not? Such a nice plan.
Yeah, definitely. This looks great for white. So bishop e3 on the board.
So in other words, I don't think we would see d5. So rook e8, knight d2 after bishop e3 probably are going to happen.
Go back.
And then, yeah, something like knight e7. Black might try. I don't know what else we can. But
knight e5. Can you get there via knight e5? Because.
Yeah, even here I'm considering playing f4. After knight e5, I'm gonna play f4 for sure.
Yeah, okay. Why do I need to encourage you to grab as much space as possible? Okay, so there's nothing.
Knight to g6.
No, you have to go back.
And here white has to decide what to do with all those pawns and pieces. Well, queen f3 might be also the move to consider, right? Just to bring your queen a little bit closer, just to
connect the rooks.
Then
that's
rook
my
d1.
big point in life. In rook d1.
And all those useful moves.
Yeah, white is by no means winning, but for sure, white has a very comfortable position. It's not easy for black to connect the rooks, find a purpose for this light squared bishop. Yeah, knight e5 was not my finest moment, so let's put that back. But after knight e7, isn't this still the plan? f4?
Yeah, I think so. Looks like a nice plan. Queen f3, rook d1. Why not bring everything to the center? White